What's up? Welcome back. My name is Amanda. Today we're making fireballs, baby, also known as pickled green cherry tomatoes. So starting off, we want to pick the best looking cherry tomatoes we can find. Now, we don't want any marks on them, any damage, and we don't want ones that are too squishy or look like they're going to ripen soon. We want ones that are still nice and firm, still got that good green, varying sizes. That's totally fine. Recipe calls for celery as one of the other ingredients. Now, definitely don't want to use any yucky parts like this. And I am just going for 1 celery per jar. I'm using half pints here. And I did have to cut them in half to make them fit, obviously. So if you're using larger jars, then you don't have to worry about it. As long as they fit in, then that's fine. Now, a couple other things that this recipe calls for, like the garlic and peppercorn and dill. I did my own amounts, whatever I wanted, so feel free to experiment a little bit. We're going to use this extra crunch powder granules. I don't know what you call this, but it helps your food stay crispy. I use this for my pickles and it works really well. Alternatives I have seen are bay leaves and then this other stuff, I can't remember the name, but moving on. Dill. Now it calls for fresh dill, but I'm all out in my garden, so this was what I dried from earlier in the season. It smells bomb. And again, I'm kind of just doing whatever amount I want. I did about 1 teaspoon per jar. I don't want them to be overly dilly, but I do want to taste a little bit of that flavor. Next, we got peppercorns. Now, I love peppery stuff, but again, I didn't want to overdo it. I did a little bit less than a full teaspoon, and I'm kind of thinking that it wasn't enough. I haven't tried these yet because I wanted to let them sit for a couple weeks, but I'll let you guys know. Yeah, feel free to experiment a little bit. The only things you don't want to experiment with are the vinegar and water ratios. You definitely don't want to mess that up. Super dangerous when you're canning. Now, we're throwing in our celery. Peppercorn's already in there. Next is garlic. Garlic, you can definitely go crazy if you want. I did about 2 cloves per jar. These are pretty small jars. And again, I didn't want it to be too overpowering. I've never tried these before, so I'm kind of unsure what they're going to taste like. Now, these are called fireballs, so they're supposed to be spicy. Now, I have an abundance of cayenne still, so I just went for those. Even though they're not the hottest pepper, I did 2 per jar, so I'm hoping it'll still bring a good flavor even if it's not too spicy. Next, we're filling up our jars with our thoroughly rinsed tomatoes. I definitely overfilled these. You'll see later in the video I did end up having to remove some of them. We want to make sure we leave the proper headspace when canning. Next, we're going to boil our liquid. So the recipe calls for 2 quarts vinegar to 1 quart water. And that was definitely a little bit more than I needed for my 6 jars. So keep that in mind. I will also link the original recipe so you guys can check that out if you would like. Canning salt is very important. We don't want to use regular salt. We don't want the colors or the water to turn all weird looking. So I used 1/2 cup canning salt, and we want to make sure we clean as we go. I'm trying to get better because I'm a very, very messy cook. Now we're bringing this mix to a boil, letting it boil for a few minutes, then we're filling up our jars. You can totally use a funnel to make this easier, but I was feeling kind of lazy. Didn't want to use a funnel. Again, very important, we leave the headspace at the top. You don't want to risk losing a whole jar just to save a couple tomatoes. And this little sticky contraption thing I'm using is very common when canning. It helps release all the air bubbles from your jars. And see, I just picked out some tomatoes. If you don't have one of these, you can totally use a chopstick. Anything to kind of get in there, release air bubbles without smushing your vegetables, of course. You don't want to be stabbing holes in all of them. You want them to stay nice and crunchy. Now I'm just topping off, making sure I'm covering as much of the tomatoes as I can while also still leaving that headspace. And this is what I think is the most important step before canning. We want to make sure we are cleaning the jars and the rims, drying them as well as possible. We don't want anything to get in the way of a nice tight fit. And doesn't that look so pretty? Ooh, I love it. I'm so excited. Okay, and then these are the rest of the tomatoes that I have. I'm just going to let them ripen in my garage just because I have never tried these. I don't know if they're going to be good. I don't want to make a million jars and then be stuck with a bunch of stuff I don't like. Now we're going to carefully add them to our boiling water. And the recipe calls for 10 minutes boil time. I'm at a high altitude, so I did 20 minutes. You can check online. There's tons of charts to let you know what your recommended boiling time is. I'm very excited to try these. Okay, so if you haven't already, go ahead, subscribe, hit the like button. I appreciate it all. Let me know if you tried these before. I'll be very disappointed if they're not good. The other jars you're seeing here, that's my cowboy candy. That's from my last video, kind of the part 1 to this candy video, and those were bomb, 10 out of 10. Definitely gonna make those again. All right, see you later, bye.